The first thing Nurse Mara heard was the man screaming at the doctors to leave him alone. It was 20:17 in the morning at Blackridge Military Hospital, and rain hammered the windows like thousands of impatient fingers. Two medics stood outside Trauma Room 4, soaked from the helicopter landing pad. Inside, a wounded sniper lay on the table, his uniform dark with blood. "Sedate him," Dr. Keller ordered. "No." The answer came from the patient. Captain Elias Vance opened one eye. His face was pale, his lips cracked, and a deep shrapnel wound ran across his left shoulder. Another fragment was buried near his ribs. Every breath looked like it cost him something. "Captain, you're losing blood," Keller said. "I know. You need surgery." I said, "No doctors." Keller stared at him. "You are in a hospital." I noticed. Then Elias pushed away a surgeon's hand. "Touch me again and I walk out." The room went silent. Mara had been working at Blackridge for 11 days. She was the newest nurse on the night shift, young enough that some of the orderlies still called her Rookie. She had no combat experience, no decorated uniform, and no impressive connections. But she had something the others had missed. She listened. She looked at Elias, not at his medals. Everyone in the room saw a stubborn soldier. Mara saw a terrified man trying desperately to remain in control. She stepped closer. "Captain," she said softly, "what is your call sign?" His eyes snapped open. "Why?" "Because I don't think Captain Vance is the man sitting in this bed." For the first time that night, he looked directly at her. "Rook," Mara nodded. "Okay, Rook, I'm Mara, and I'm not going to force you into surgery." Dr. Keller turned toward her. "Nurse, this is not a negotiation." But Mara ignored him. She leaned closer to Elias. "But I am going to ask you one question. What happened to the rest of your team?" Elias's jaw tightened. "Dead. Everyone." A long silence. "One missing." His pulse jumped on the monitor. Mara noticed. "So you're not afraid of dying?" She whispered. "You're afraid of dying before you find him." Elias stared at her as thunder rolled outside. Then he whispered a name. "Daniel." The doctors exchanged confused looks. Mara didn't. She asked, "We're 30 miles north." "Mountain Pass. We were ambushed." Keller interrupted. "Captain, your blood pressure is collapsing." Elias grabbed Mara's wrist with surprising strength. "Don't let them put me under." "Why?" "Because if I sleep, I may not wake up." It sounded like fear, but Mara heard something else beneath it. "Experience." "Rook," she said, "look at me." He did. "You're going to stay awake. But you're also going to let us keep you alive." He hesitated. Then he nodded once. The surgery began without anesthesia. For 40 minutes, Elias clenched a folded piece of cloth between his teeth while Mara stood beside him. She counted his breaths, kept him focused, and whispered simple questions whenever his eyes began to close. "What was Daniel like?" "Annoying." Mara smiled. "Good. Keep talking." "Cheated at cards." "Terrible man." "Owed me $12. "Then you definitely can't die. You need to collect." A weak laugh escaped him. Then the monitor screamed. Elias's blood pressure crashed. "Clamp." "Where is the bleed?" Keller shouted. Mara looked at the monitor, then at Elias's face. "Wait." Everyone froze. She remembered his earlier words. 30 miles north, Mountain Pass, ambush, Daniel missing, and now, strangely, Elias was trying to move his right hand toward his chest. "Captain," Mara said, "what are you reaching for?" "My radio." "There is no radio." "There should be." Mara searched beneath the blanket and found a tiny transmitter taped inside his vest. She switched it on. Static filled the room. Then came 3 faint clicks. Elias went rigid. "That's him. Daniel." Mara asked. 3 clicks came again. Elias began crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just one tear sliding down a face that had survived things nobody in that room could imagine. 3 clicks, he whispered. "Our emergency signal." Keller stared at the transmitter. "That could be interference." "No," Elias said. "Daniel is alive." Mara looked at the clock. "Can you tell us where?" Elias closed his eyes. "Give me the map." Keller objected, but Mara grabbed the hospital tablet and pulled up a terrain map. Elias pointed weakly. "Here?" "That valley?" Mara asked. "No. 20 meters east." She zoomed in. "There's nothing there." "There is." Mara studied the satellite image. Then she noticed a narrow line beneath the trees, an old mining tunnel. Elias nodded. Daniel was trapped inside it. The room suddenly became a command center. The hospital contacted the rescue unit. But there was another problem. The transmitter signal was fading. "If they move now," Elias said, "they'll miss him." Keller shook his head. "Captain, you need to survive before you start planning rescues." Elias looked at him. "I didn't survive this long by choosing one." Then his heart stopped. The monitor became a flat line. Mara shouted for the defibrillator. Keller shocked him once. "Nothing." Again, "Nothing." "Come on." "Rook," Mara whispered. She pressed her palm against his chest. "You promised me $12. A third shock. The monitor flickered. One beat, then another. Elias gasped. Everyone exhaled, but the radio suddenly crackled. A man's voice came through. "Rook, if you can hear me, don't trust the medic." Mara froze. Keller turned pale. The voice continued. There's a traitor at Blackridge. Then silence. Every person in the room looked at everyone else. Elias slowly turned his head toward the doorway. Lock it. Mara hit the security button. The door slammed shut. 2 armed guards rushed in. Keller whispered, "Who is the medic?" Elias looked at him. "I don't know." The hospital lights suddenly went out. Emergency red lights flooded the corridor. Somewhere outside, a gunshot cracked. Mara grabbed Elias's hand. "Stay with me." He looked at her. "You're the new nurse." "Yes." "You're not scared." "I am." "Good." "Why?" "Means you're still thinking." The footsteps approached the trauma room slow, heavy. 3 knocks. Then a voice. "Open the door." Elias's eyes narrowed. "That isn't Daniel." Mara looked around. There was no weapon, no backup, only a wounded sniper, a terrified nurse, and a room full of machines. Then Mara noticed the ceiling ventilation panel. She remembered something from orientation. The trauma wing had an old emergency access tunnel connecting to the ambulance garage. She looked at Elias. "Can you stand?" He almost laughed. "No." "Can you crawl?" A pause. "Yes." Mara pulled the panel open. Together they moved. Elias dragged himself forward while Mara supported his weight. Behind them, the door began shaking. "Faster." Elias whispered. "I thought snipers were patient. Only when we're hiding." They reached the tunnel. Then Elias stopped. "What?" He pointed ahead. A red blinking light. Not a lamp. A laser sight. Mara froze. Elias grabbed her and pulled her behind the wall. A bullet struck the metal pipe where her head had been. "Run!" They crawled through darkness as gunfire echoed behind them. At the garage, Mara slammed the emergency door. Outside, a rescue helicopter was warming its engines. The pilot saw them and rushed forward. Elias grabbed his radio. "Mountain pass. Old mining tunnel. Survivor signal confirmed." Then another voice answered. "Rook, this is Daniel." Elias closed his eyes. "Daniel, I knew you'd come. You doubted me." "I doubted the hospital." Elias smiled through tears. "Same." Before dawn, while the rescue helicopter disappeared into the storm, Elias finally allowed Mara to examine the photograph tucked inside his damaged vest. It showed 3 soldiers standing beside a mountain ridge, laughing beneath a summer sky. "That was before," he said. "Before what?" "Before I learned that surviving can feel worse than losing." Mara studied the photograph. "You don't have to carry everyone forever." "Yes, I do." "No," she answered. "You carry their memory. That's different." He looked at Daniel's empty place in the photograph. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Mara noticed a small inscription on the back. 3 names, 3 promises, 1 date. Elias traced the final line with his finger. "Daniel wrote this." "What does it say?" He swallowed. "Whoever comes home first brings the others home." Mara smiled gently. "Tonight, you did." Elias shook his head. "No, tonight, we did." And somewhere beyond the hospital walls, the first pale light of morning touched the mountains, as if the night itself had finally decided to let them go. For the first time ever. Hours later, rescue teams pulled Daniel from the mountain tunnel alive. The traitor was arrested at Blackridge, and Captain Elias Vance, he survived. Weeks later, Mara walked into his rehabilitation room. He was sitting by the window, his arm in a sling. "You owe me $12, she said. Elias looked up. "You saved my life. Still owe me." He laughed. Then his expression softened. "You know why I refused every doctor?" Mara shook her head. "I had a partner once who trusted the wrong person in a hospital. He never came home." She understood. "You thought doctors were the enemy. I thought trusting anyone was." Mara sat beside him, and now, Elias looked at her. "Now I know trust isn't about finding someone who can promise nothing will go wrong." He smiled. "It's finding someone who stays when everything does." Mara smiled back. Outside, dawn broke over Blackridge, turning the wet mountains gold. Elias had entered the hospital as a legend nobody could reach. He left it as something better. A man who finally understood that courage wasn't refusing help. Sometimes courage was whispering your call sign to a stranger and believing she would answer. And Mara, the nurse everyone had underestimated, never forgot the lesson either. Because sometimes the person who saves a hero isn't the strongest person in the room. Sometimes it's the one who simply listens when everyone else has stopped hearing. If this story moved you, subscribe for more unforgettable stories of courage, sacrifice, and second chances. Because somewhere right now, another wounded soul may be waiting for someone to call them by the name they thought the world had forgotten.